Yeah, my name's Mike Fowler. I'm invited down here. I believe I'll be back here Friday for graduation thing. I'll tell you real quick, my story. And as far as, I'm going to kind of go through some areas kind of faster than others, but my childhood, growing up, chaos, addiction, alcohol, fighting, the first 10 years of my life. Pretty, yeah. And so my mom moves out of this place. We end up living in 4 or 5 different public housing places. And the guy would always find some way to, make us back in. But so that was going on and everything. And my first beer was at 11. And then just things began to progress. And as we moved into these places, there was nobody really watching me. My mom was doing her own thing. And I was out there doing my own thing. So what happened was eventually, by doing the things I was doing, I got arrested and everything. I've been in one rehab in my life, and that was up in Erie, up there. And then from Erie, I went to it's called George Junior Republic. I was there for a while, and then they came up with Adelphi. They said, this is the place. There's a drug and alcohol program. Now, keep in mind, this is 1988, a long time ago. They didn't have certain things and everything. And so I come down and all that, and I was one of those ones that first it was like shell shock. I was like, what the heck am I doing here? I'm like, just trying to study things and everything and watch things and all that. And so one of the things early on was, and this doesn't happen with everybody, but one amazing thing was, even at 14 years old, I said to myself, I just made a commitment to myself right then and there. I said, I am never, ever going to put myself in a situation where I got to ask to come in a room, come out of a room, when to eat, sleep, and crap. Like, I'm never going to do that again. So, and the crazy thing is I didn't. I never ended up in that situation again, but it took certain steps. It took certain things to do and all that. Because like I was saying earlier in another class, we can say that we'll never, do this again or do that again, but then we find ourselves doing it. It's like, even sometimes it's just impulsively or it just happens for some reason. So anyhow, I learned many things, through this program. One of the things I learned is this program actually cares. I mean, they really do care. I mean, when I came in, I didn't believe it. Just like it's kind of like a place to just keep you away from everybody else and that, but no, they really care. And there's so many things about it. I learned more than the drug and alcohol stuff. Yeah, it's like at times I felt like I was overdosing on it. That's how much you were talking about it, but it helped. You know what I'm saying? Because when I was released from there, I knew what to avoid. I knew to stay away from all that, everything. But and then one of the things that told me that this place actually cares is earlier. When I was 30 years old, to go get my master's, I just contacted somebody down here, and I was just touching base, catching up with some people and stuff. And they turn around and give me like $1,000 scholarship, $400 worth of gas cards and everything. And I'm like, just like blown away by that because, it wasn't too long ago, but most people didn't do. Nowadays, the resources, all this stuff's there for you. It's for you. It's there if you take advantage of it. If you want it, you got to go after it. You know what I'm saying? And so, like that happened, and I said, man, they have this thing called continued care, but when you're 30 years old, like wow, So I was just blown away, but I was shocked. So aside from that, so that first master's attempt, I failed. And I think I skipped the part about my mom, with my bachelor's and all that, passing away and all that. I talk about that. I told my story 10 times today, so just bear with me, guys. So anyhow, but I failed the first attempt and everything, and ended up, the good thing that came out of that is that they have these things called, field placements where you pick a place and it's like an internship, and they put me in this place that was affiliated with this like juggernaut rehab, and I was just like, all right, they're connected here, and so I was like, all right. So I called them and I asked them what the positions they had there and everything, and none of them seemed interested. So I told him, I said, listen, in a year, I'm gonna call back, I'm gonna have more experience, and we'll go from there. So I called back in a year and they're like, yeah, we need a family therapist, we need an inpatient therapist, we need a halfway house therapist. And she's like, which one do you want to apply for? And I said, all of them. And so I ended up, I got picked for the family therapist and I got to choose between those two, you know, the inpatient. So with the inpatient rehab, I worked in there for 10 years. It was interesting because the first senior therapist was there for 20 years. He passed away, and I was the next senior therapist for 10 years. Yes, sir. I don't really want to go into that, just because that was a different person back then, you know? But it's something that it wasn't me. And what I'm saying is not to separate myself from it. It's like, that's not the person who I am. You know, that's the person I am if I'm all screwed up on all these different drugs and everything. Yeah, it was like, and at that point, I can tell you, and I don't know if anybody else can relate to this or not, but when I did get arrested, I had this feeling like, man, thank God. So, hey, thank God. It was crazy. It's just like, you know, I'm glad it's over. I'm glad finally somebody, because before that, I was like almost walking around, like looking like, who's going to stop me? Like, you know, who's going to arrest me? Like I was doing all these things and nothing was happening. And then it hit the fan, you know. So we're coming down here and getting out. And so then like going to the rehab 10 years, and then I went into, they have, you know, the withdrawal management detox, whatever, did that for a couple of years. And, you know, the organization, when I first started, you know, their values, their mission statement, everything that aligned with, you know, what I was about, what I was, my values were and everything. And it changed, you know, different leadership, et cetera, and all this stuff. And so I ended up, after being there for a total of like 13 years, I moved to a smaller rehab that was more in line with, you know, the things that I believed and all that. And the most interesting thing is that old place that I worked at, they came back and bought the place that I was working at again. So, and then they started telling me all these different things, like where I would be, and then they put me back here and do all this and everything. And it's like, they never kept their words. So I was like, okay, I know where this is going, you know? So I got out of there and, you know, I'm online, I'm looking for jobs and everything. And all of a sudden I come across this ad on Indeed. Substance use counselor for Allegheny, you know, County Jail. And I'm like, wow, you know, like I never thought about that. I never thought about, you know, going, working in jail and everything. And I didn't know what it would be like. I remember, like I've been there, so that on the 28th, it'll be a year for me being at the jail. But I remember before I started, I had all these images in my head of what it would look like. Like I'd have 40 convicts around me yelling and trying to do group and other people yelling from other. It wasn't like that, you know, we got things, group rooms and stuff like that. We're changing things and all that. But one of the things that I wanted to say is that most interesting thing is think about how many years it's been. And my first day of work going to the jail, I get out of my car and I'm walking across this huge parking lot and I'm looking up at the jail and I'm staring at it and everything. And all of a sudden it just goes through my mind and it says, I hear from Adelphi Village to Allegheny County Jail. And as going there as somebody who's going there to help people out, to work, you know what I'm saying? Not going there because they took something from somebody or something. And it just kind of blew me away, you know, it was like from Adelphi to ACJ. And I feel good about that. And see, that's where that self-esteem comes from, you know, doing things, accomplishing things, you know, and beginning to realize you are capable of achieving things if you want to. Like I keep saying, you got to put the work in, you know, you got to make things happen. And anybody that's been down a similar path, if anybody can relate to anything I've said, I'm sure you know how to make things happen. And a lot of times too is like, you know, a lot of the, I'll say this also, a lot of the negative things before, even like going to a place, a lot of negative things I did, like the lying, the manipulation, the cheating, the stealing, all that junk. When you take that, except for the cheating stuff, you apply that to something positive, like there's no softening. It's like those are skills. You don't realize it. At the time, you think this is just how I am. This is where I come from. This is, but no, like those are actual skills. It's like when my mom died when I was like 26, it's like, I'm sitting there with no money and everything. And I'm like, okay, what am I going to do? And so I picked up the phone and it was like, I'm calling every single place I can. I'm like, hey, can you do this? No, anybody can. Well, try this number, and I'm like, okay, cool. So I go that. And it's kind of like, for guys, if you have an addiction, you want to get high, and you text somebody and say, hey, man, you got it. It's like, no, it's still my last one. You're not going to be like, oh, well, looks like I don't get high today. You're not going to be like that. You're going to keep going and going and going until you find something. You know what I'm saying? So same thing can apply to your goals, your hopes, your ambitions, dreams, all of that. Yes, sir.
For you personally, it was these like proposed.
Yeah.
Were.
Yeah, so that's the Keystone House. Yeah, it was 6 to 9 months, term 11.
Was that the Greystone one or?
No, that was so long ago, like when the dinosaurs were roaming. No. It's like, yeah, they don't have it now or anything, but at the time when I came down, it was like only 3 or 4 houses, and that was one of them.
It was like a
Yeah, so at the time they had a behavioral house and they had a house specifically for drug and alcohol. They had the ladies and it was that's all they had, And so now it's like look at how big. It's amazing, how big this place got. But the biggest message I want to give you guys before I leave here is that these people do care whether you think that way or feel that way. I can tell you. And yes, sir.
Who was your inspiration to do better in life?
I've got a good question to say. Inspiration to do better in life.
or what?
For what? One of the things, that's hard to say because it's like, I feel like a lot of it came from within.
Sure.
I did look to, I read books on like world leaders and stuff like that and all that. And, so a lot of it came from like this internal motivation, like
yourself?
yeah, to change, and all that. And, yeah.
I have one more question.
Yes, sir.
What reminders did you say to yourself to focus on being a better you?
Say it again.
What reminders did you say to yourself to focus on being a better you?
And that's good you say that because here's the thing. It's like, just like, you can take away, the drugs and alcohol and everything, but it's like, you got to change this, you know what I'm saying? You got to change those behaviors and all that. And there's things, I have my character defects, I have problems with, I'm impatient sometimes. I have a hard time waiting on someone, I flap the handle if I drop a fork, but I catch myself and I'm like, okay, where did that come from? It's a fork, man. Like you want to get in a fight with a fork? I mean, come on. Yes, sir.
When you got out, how did you keep yourself out of trouble?
That's a good question too. So what happened was, I'm glad you asked that. What happened was they went back and did a home study of where I was living at because they were trying to determine whether or not I could go back home. It was safe enough, whatever. And it passed and all that. So I was able to go back home. Some of the stipulations were like my mother had to go to outpatient treatment for problems, which she did. And then I know I went to counseling. I was on probation for a year. I did 90 and 90. I believe I did outpatient too for a while. But it was very challenging because, you still surrounded. But one of the things was, as time went by and I started really like, I got to do something to get out of here. You know what I'm saying? I didn't get out of what most people won't believe. I didn't get out of this. This is the truth. I didn't get out of public housing until I was 25 years old. Okay. So it was tough. It was tough, you know, like living in poverty and trying to make it, trying to survive. Yes, sir.
What made you realize that what you doing was like it? What you were doing?
It's funny you asked that too, because I remember this conversation I had with my PO when he first met me. And at the time I was 14. And I remember we were talking, I had to go somewhere, big like evaluation by some expert or something. And we were out there talking and he just casually looked at me and he says, where do you see yourself 25 years from now? And to ask a young person that, it's like, come on now. And I'm looking at him and I'm thinking about the situation I'm in and everything. I don't know, man. It was like a counselor. So 25 years, it's like, at about, what was it, about 34, I got a career as a substance use counselor. Yes, sir.
Who helped you like get your career? Yeah, like who helped you get your career and like what was your on how it worked?
Sorry, take your time.
Yeah, I was just asking you like who helped you get your career?
And get your career started?
Yeah.
Like get into college and stuff like
Yeah.
that. I gotta tell you this, that was something that back then, I'm guessing today, it's much, much, much more easier. But back then, if you didn't have a family member who went to college, you didn't know what to do. You're like, okay, how does this financial aid work? You know, you're seeing these things you got to fill out. You're like, what the hell is this? Am I signing the life away? You know, and it's a great question because I struggled. And at the time, there was this place called OBR, Office of Vocational Rehabilitation. And I called them up because of some, and I was like, listen, I'm trying to start. Every time it comes time to start, I call up and I'd say, hey, this is Mike Fowler. I want to make sure my financial stuff's all good. I'm going to start this semester. And the guy's like, well, it says here, dollars. I'm like, you know, I look at my friend Kevin. I'm like, you got $600? I got $6. But you know, it's like, so that kept coming up, you know, until I called OBR, and then OBR was like, it was an organization that made that process easier. It made that process easier. Yes, sir.
I got two questions. The first one is, did you ever keep one in the corner growing up?
Yes and no. My mom wanted the best for me and everything, and my mom was dealing with her own stuff and all that. And I always look at, you know, and this is how I understand, you know, when, especially for people who come out of households where people are using things or drinking things, it's like, you know, we always tell people, yeah, you know, people, places, things and all that, but at the end of the day, that's my mom. You know, I said, you know, if somebody says something, my voice going up there, you know what I'm saying? And so for, you know, that she was a support, and I look back and I say, you know, she did good under the circumstances that she was in, kind of like myself.
Yes, sir. And
Go ahead.
my other question was, what did you do to make it through the program? Like, so like spring to make it through the program, make you go back faster, made you like have a way to help you.
Would help you get through?
Yeah.
So you guys like going to school here, or are you in a place where like?
The school is going to end here next Friday, so.
Okay. But I mean, are you in like one of the homes or something?
Yeah.
Okay, to get through that, all right, so let me tell you this, because I need to tell the guys at the jail this. One of the things I did when I went in there was, I didn't want to see any calendars, I didn't want to see any clocks. I don't want to see nothing. I don't want you to tell me what day it was, I don't want you to tell me what the date was and all that. And even though it was 11 months, before you know it, I'm like, good Lord, like all these months have passed, just because those guys are like, you know.
Yeah, count the days, Bob.
Yeah, it just drags. It really drags. Another thing too, what's that?
Makes it slower.
Yeah, absolutely. And another thing too is like finding things, you know, that you can do to make that go faster. Like they had these things, you know, they called them contracts, and you get on them and you do certain things or have certain behaviors or whatever, and then if you can, yeah, you get rewarded. So stuff like that, you know, you get to go out to the movies or something like that.
Something, they got movies nowadays, but like we'll get like on this like a cheaper or something like that.
Okay.
Another question is, do you think you should focus like on yourself more while you're in here, or focus on yourself and your family?
So family I have now, my wife is, she's a nurse, she's getting ready to retire early. So there's a stepkid, he knows and everything. So one of the good things is with the stepkids, because it's like, I had a talk with the mom one time, you know, she's she was all like, you know, worried about them and they finished college. And I was like, listen, these guys are taking care of themselves. It's like they were getting an apartment together. And I'm like, I told her, I said, these guys, like the educations now, they're getting an apartment together. Like, just be happy. Be happy they can support themselves because someday when you are gone, they can carry on,
Yeah,
you know.
and you said you have like anger issues.
Oh, yeah.
A question for that is what I also do. Like, say you're on, like, with me, sometimes with my dad, because he's not the best of persons, when I'm on the phone with him, he says stuff that like doesn't trigger me or makes me mad and stuff. Like if like I'm guessing you're in a situation or something like that with someone, like, how do you cope with that? Like, how do you like find ways to calm yourself down and get unangry and like realize that it's just words and that's not true?
That's excellent you said that. I was just telling you, because of my father not being around when I was a kid, I used to walk around like with a headache every day. That's how pissed off I was.
Yeah.
And, I destroyed a lot of things along the way, you know? Yeah. And, one of the things is though, is that when things are untrue like that and everything, you know them to be untrue, it's like, you know, you have to set a boundary, be like, man, if this is how you're gonna talk to me, I gotta go.
Yeah, and that's what my mom was trying to say a while ago. They just cut him off because it's not
Yeah.
healthy for you. It's not making you a better person.
There you go.
But the difficult is he's still my dad.
Yeah. But it's like also too, though, like when we talk about the people, places and things, it's like you can also love people from a distance.
For sure.
You know, like you can still,
Like reach out to him every once in a
Yeah.
while. Yeah.
yeah. And then if it starts going south or something, just be like, all right, you know, I'm just thinking about
I
it.
think I tried it before and he starts going in his mood, being saying, oh, you did this, you did that, I don't know what I get and all this other. I was like, that's what I try to do, but it's not as easy as people say.
Right. Right. One of the things though too is like, trying to find some kind of mentor in your life, something positive. If somebody asks about, positive people in your life.
Hey,
So
so my counselor over there, he's a positive person in my life. He's trying to help me out.
They're a positive person in my life too.
Absolutely. I mean, you know, it's like, you know, getting, you know, I told one class, you know, it's like, yeah, if you want to go places in life, if you want to do things, accomplish things, like, you know, you don't want to hang out with people who aren't going anywhere or just they're going the wrong way or whatever. It's like, you want to hang with people where,
They're gonna make you better.
yeah, yeah. Like I came here today, like just to talk to you guys, and I was just talking about that one job and I met somebody that said they knew somebody was the head of probation down there. And I'm like, well, that's cool, you know, like, you know what I'm saying? Sometimes, and when you look at things like life coaching and, you know, those motivational speakers and all that, they tell you, you know, you got to put yourself in miracle's way. Like if you want a miracle to happen, it just doesn't happen. You just can't sit around and be like, all right, a miracle's going to happen. You got to do something.
And do you still have anger to this day? Like
Angerous day, I'd be lying if I said I did.
and like with that, because you can control it better now than you did when you were younger. What are some ways that help you manage your anger and control it better now than when we was younger?
Right now, just knowing that you need outlets for that. And I would say, some of my outlets are, we have this like trail out my place. And, you know, I go out at least 30 minutes a day, walk and everything. Do that. There's that. Also, you know, talk to friends, things like that. My wife sometimes, I try to just get away from her because I don't want her to feel any of that. You know what I'm saying? If I'm angry, I just remove myself. Because sometimes when we're angry, we say things that don't mean. Yeah, we can't, sometimes we'll say things and there's no walking that back. You could say something very hurtful and there's no walking that back.
Okay, my last question is, we used to be on fights and stuff, and that's something that I have some people do. How did you focus your anger on something else and do something, like, what did you do basically, instead of getting in fights, like, what did you put your anger towards instead?
I think what I did was, I think once I was off of all the chemicals and everything like that, I think what I did was I kind of turned it into motivation. I turned it into motivation to where instead of sitting around being pissed off and everything, I'm like, okay, how do I make myself happy? How do I get out of my situation? How do I get the hell out of this area? You know what I'm saying? And it's like, so yeah, turning that into motivation. There's all these different things, we teach, the breathing exercises and all that. And so, and one of the things too, now, as far as stress is concerned, and even anger sometimes, even though I'm 52 years old, I play Black Ops 6, and that's like, it's my favorite game. I'll probably be playing that tonight, and it's crazy. And it's like, it was funny too, because I started like losing my touch, and I'm thinking, damn, I'm getting old, my reflexes are getting slow and everything. And then for some reason, all of a sudden, I started getting real good again. I'm like, this is awesome. So, and she's like, go ahead, but yeah. So.
Did you have any friends and family with the party mix success at all?
I mean, my mom's biggest thing was, she wanted to see me graduate. She really did. And at one point, I didn't want to graduate. And if she would have just been like, okay, whatever, I might not be here today talking.
Do you think if your mom wasn't supportive, how you say she was, and was like different, just like letting you do whatever you want, do you think it'd be a different story today?
She was like supportive
And then if like she wasn't supportive,
well,
like she was, like you said,
yeah, she was supportive, but everything like keep in mind, like I said, she had her stuff going on.
sure, but like you know, like supportive, like as much as she could.
Yeah, and like so, like there's a lot of things where I got away with a lot of stuff, and that's not good. You want like a nice balance there.
Like strict, a little bit of strictness.
Yeah, you don't want too much strictness, and you don't want too much, leeway to where you're gonna, and so and I'll tell you this though, after I got out of Adelphi and everything, one of the things was as I started improving my life, especially when I finally went to college, I started noticing my mom making changes in her life. Like she got a job, she quit drinking, she was working like 2-3 shifts, like saving money.
So do you think with you bettering yourself made her realize that she could do the same thing?
Yeah, she saw me, and this is what I said in another class too, is like, when you do anything major in your life, whether it's, you decide, like, let's say you're in a certain job and you decide to do something totally different that nobody would expect. Like, even if somebody doesn't say anything, they notice, they watch, you know what I'm saying? And it's like, they, they're watching and it's like, they're thinking about their situation and everything, and that's what she was doing. She was thinking about, who's going out there doing. Another thing too was like, I had this girl, and like, we were together for like 2 years, and then she did me wrong. I gave her a second chance, and she did me wrong again. And I was like, okay, I'm done. That's it. Cut off forever. And I remember my mom saying later on, she was like, "You really surprised me with that girl." She's like, I thought she was going back to her. Because that was my mom's pattern, to keep going back to guys.
Treat her funny, want to see money, twice she on me. We want to see on me, twice she on you.
So, anything else? Brad, I appreciate you guys.
Any problem?
God's great.
Shocked, but get it.
You guys.
Yes, he did.
Oh, yeah,
Oh, really?
just this morning.
Oh.
I know it's like,